If you find yourself doing a lot of redundant work over and over in Modo, chances are you are doing it wrong. Or doing it wrongly, I suppose, would be more grammatically correct. Anyway, what Modo is great about is allowing you, A, to automate your workflow using things like macros and scripts and customizing the UI, but also it's great at allowing us to reuse just regular old work that we've done using a variety of types of presets. As you might be familiar with, in the preset browser, if we head up here in the Model tab to the top left, we have a Presets button. And in here, you're going to see I have a presets folder with a wheel saved into it. In this tutorial, we're going to talk about how to save mesh presets, some caveats having to do with that, and just generally understanding the preset workflow. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to close this up again. And the first thing we want to do is create a folder somewhere on your hard drive or on the network at your workplace or whatever where you can save your presets. Now, if you're working all alone, obviously you might want to save this in your documents folder, somewhere permanent that you can always get to. And if you're working in a group at the office, then it will be very helpful to save this on the network so everybody can share your great work. So let's hit F6 to bring up that preset browser, which by the way is a toggle. You can hit F6 to open and close this preset browser, which is very handy. And to add that path, you just go down here to, let me close this up so that we can get rid of that folder for a moment. Let's pretend that we don't have it. I'll go down to Add Path, and then I've created a presets folder here on my desktop. Again, desktop is probably not the best place to put this. If you're working, you'd probably want to put this in your documents folder or what have you, but that's where I've got it. And in there, I have this thing called Wheel LXL. Let me delete that and we'll start from scratch and show you how to save something just like that. So with this wheel selected, I can always go over here and right-click, go down to Presets, and Save. Now you want to be really careful. This is not Save Assembly. That is a very different thing. You do not want to do that here. Let's go to Presets and Save. And in the Presets folder, I'll call this my wheel. And it's going to save it as a mesh preset, LXL. There are several types of preset files in Modo. Of course, we have LXO files. Those are our Luxology scene files, like this one. We have LXL, which are mesh presets, and LXP, which are material presets. So just so you're aware of that, let's save that. And now if I hit F6, we'll see that preset is now in that presets directory. Now the presets directory will show you LXL files. It will show you LXP files. It will not show you LXO files. So don't make the mistake of saving your scene files into your presets directory because those will not show up. Only presets will show up. Now, let's just talk about preset workflow for a moment here. The idea is that these presets are reusable, but we're not linking to them in any way. So let me close this up, make a new document using Control-N. I'll use the Control-1 pie menu and go down to toggle my grid. And now we're just in a very blank scene. Nothing in here at all. Hit F6, double-click on that wheel, and it's going to drop in that preset. Now you're going to immediately notice something a little odd here. Not only do we have the item that we clicked on, it's also included all 4 of our instances. Now in this case, that's a very nice feature because we probably want for our instances to come in. Anytime we're going to be creating another antique car that needs these wheels, you're probably going to need 4 of them, so you might as well include those in the preset. However, generally speaking, bringing in the instances of an item is probably not desirable. So what we can do is close this up, and let's save this a slightly different way. Rather than save it right out of this file, let's hit Control-N, create a blank file, drag that tire mesh into that file. So now this is the only one we have. Also notice that it's transformed off to one side. If we look, its position channels are all something other than 0. So let's go down to Reset All. That'll set those all back to 0. And now this guy is centered. And this is the way that typically I would save a mesh preset. Now we can select this guy, right-click, go down to Presets, and Save. And save it over that original. Now let's close up this document. And why not make another new one, just so we have a blank document here. F6, there's the preset. If I double-click it, it's going to drop that in. Now, as I was saying earlier, dropping this in creates no link to this original at all. This original is not there to serve as a central location for this data. It's just there as a starting point. We drop it in. Once we drop it in, we are completely independent of this file. That way you can reuse this as much as you want. Then you can delete this LXL file, change it, update it, whatever. It's not going to change your scene files at all. This is a very safe way of working so that you can Modo is a destructive workflow, right? So it's all about dropping things in and just moving on. Forget about the past. Just move on. Okay, let's close this up. Go back to our scene here. One last thing is you may want to change those icons. So let's look in our preset browser. The default icon is not the prettiest thing in the world. It is relatively indicative of the shape that we're talking about here, but we might want it to look a little bit nicer. And there are a couple of ways we can do that. One is to run a render. So let's head here to our render tab. Zoom in on this wheel. And because those icons are square, I like to go to the render node here in the shader tree. We're going to talk about this later in more detail. Don't worry. Just follow along. If I click on that render node, look in the frame properties over on the right. I'm going to set the frame width to 512, the height to 512 as well, so it's a square image. Also, I can click on the body and hit H for hide. Let's click on this other wheel and H for hide that also. Then I can render this so that we end up with a picture. Close that up, go back to our preset browser using F6 on the keyboard, right-click here and go down to Replace Icon with Last Render, and that should drop it in. If you don't see it change right away, all you need to do is just toggle the folder, and that should refresh the screen. Now, let's do that a slightly different way now. Another way we can do that is go to the Model tab. And what I like to do for mesh presets, and this is purely a preference, is kind of zoom out because these images are quite small, and if you do them zoomed in, then things don't look quite right. So I'm going to zoom out so that we have a small image of our wheel, take a screenshot, and then just save that real quick on my desktop. And once I have that, then I go here and right-click this guy, replace icon with image file, go to that desktop, and choose that capture. Once again, we'll toggle folders, and there it is. So now I can see that this is a mesh preset and not some rendered thing, basically. I don't know. It's purely a preference thing. I just like the way that looks a little bit better in the context of my workflow. So that is saving a mesh preset. You can save mesh presets with instances if you want. You can save them all by themselves if you want. And I definitely recommend saving as many of those as you see fit. I think there are so many uses for these. If you design cars frequently, you need to be saving car bodies. Every basic car shape that you make, before you do any of the detailing, go ahead and save that out as a buck so that next time you want to design a similar car, you've got a good starting point. So definitely keep that in mind as you're working. As we work with other parts of Modo, we'll be saving presets for those as well. Materials, assemblies, all kinds of good stuff. So let's move on.